Right now, there are more than 3 million electric vehicles on the road in the U.S., but it seems some owners are having a bit of buyer's regret.
There is a sparking heated debate in the auto world. The real reasons why some EV owners are turning their backs on electric cars and heading back to good old gasoline vehicles. When EVs first hit the market, early adopters were driven by a dream: saving the planet with cleaner, greener technology. But fast forward a few years, and reality is hitting hard. A surprising number of EV enthusiasts are rethinking their choice. In fact, a recent study revealed that 46% of EV owners in the US are considering a gas-powered car as their next vehicle. And globally, that number is 29%.
A new survey found that nearly half of EV drivers would like to actually switch back to those gas-powered cars.
Why the change of heart? Well, EVs were marketed as efficient and low maintenance, thanks to fewer moving parts. But the truth? They've been found to be 80% more problematic than their gas-powered counterparts. From costs to convenience, we're breaking it all down in this video. Let's dive right in. Real-world battery range. Several issues have emerged concerning electric cars after their widespread adoption. These include range anxiety, inadequate charging infrastructure, software problems, battery fires, and expensive battery replacement, to mention but a few. One of the most daunting concerns when switching from good old-fashioned combustion engines to electric power is, of course, the range. EV battery packs aren't viable for vehicle use after they lose 70 to 80% of their original capacity. Nobody wants to be left stranded in an EV with no power, miles from home, and you can't exactly bring a jerry can of electricity in the boot for emergencies. Electric cars often have a lower real-world range than what manufacturers claim due to factors such as battery deterioration and driving habits. So, with range anxiety being one of the most influential barriers compelling consumers to switch over to ICE, it's vital to understand the reasons why the real-world range is often so much lower than manufacturer-quoted figures. EV ranges are not determined in real-world situations, and the conditions in which these cars are tested will dramatically manipulate the figures achieved. For instance, the figures always assume a fully charged battery, whereas most electric cars can only be charged to 80% of the battery capacity to reduce battery deterioration. Another thing that's right is that heavy winds will cause drag on your car, meaning more power is required to cut through the air to maintain speed, which drains more power than on a calm day. It is not factored into the test conditions that EVs endure by the manufacturers in the wind. That's right. Heavy winds will cause drag on your car, meaning more power is required to cut through the air to maintain speed, which drains more power than on a calm day. Over the course of a full charge, this will reduce the miles achieved. Think about your mobile phone. Have you ever noticed that the battery seems to last all day with no issues when it's new, but after some time with the phone, you always seem to need to have it on charge? That's because age and regular charging will actually drain the battery life, and it's much the same in your electric car too. There's little that can be done here, especially as the consumer. So just be wary that over the course of your ownership period, the range will naturally deteriorate. This is especially important to know if you're shopping around for a used EV, as this wear and tear will already be in place on the battery, so take manufacturer range estimates with a pinch of salt. In addition, cold temperatures affect the performance of batteries. The electric current generated by a battery is produced when a connection is made between its positive and negative terminals. When the terminals are connected, a chemical reaction is initiated that generates electrons to supply the current of the battery. Lowering the ambient temperature causes chemical reactions to proceed more slowly, so a battery used at a low temperature produces less current than at a higher temperature. As cold batteries run down, they quickly reach the point where they cannot deliver enough current to keep up with the demand. In conclusion, consumers should always be skeptical of the figures quoted from manufacturers and turn to reports and reviews by independent third parties who have provided real-world figures from various EV makes and models. Now, if you thought cold weather was the only thing testing EV owners' patience, think again. Imagine planning a road trip only to find out that charging your car might be as frustrating as finding a parking spot in downtown traffic. Let's talk about charging anxiety, another major reason why EVs are losing their charm. Charging anxiety. Another reason EVs are becoming less popular is the lack of charging infrastructure in most areas. Studies have shown that outside China and California, there are inadequate charging stations. Furthermore, inoperable and poorly maintained public charging stations increasingly frustrate drivers. Vandalism of charging equipment is also on the rise as some unscrupulous people hunt for the copper in the wires. This adds to the scarcity of functional charging points. Existing charging stations are not so reliable either. It is estimated that roughly 1 in 5 public charging attempts fails. Compatibility issues between different EV models and chargers pose a challenge as well. On top of that, there's no doubt it takes longer to charge an EV than it does to pump gas, which is really crucial, especially on road trips. The reasons for the variation in charge time are down to a number of factors. Some are seemingly innocuous, like the ambient temperature and the temperature of the battery. Very hot or cold temperatures will slow the process. A warm battery tends to accept a faster charge than a cold one. Around 30 degrees Celsius is ideal. More importantly, it boils down to the battery's size, the acceptance rate of the battery measured in kilowatts, kW, and the state of charge, SOC, when the charging begins. The biggest problem lies in setting up new charging stations. The cost of installing EV chargers is a significant barrier. Equipment, installation, and maintenance costs can be prohibitively expensive, especially for small businesses and municipalities. Inconsistent policies across regions create obstacles to infrastructure expansion. There are significant disparities in charger availability between urban and rural areas. Additionally, multi-unit dwellings and low-income communities often lack sufficient access to charging infrastructure. The increased demand for electricity from EVs also strains the power grid. Charging at home could be a solution, but it might not be an option for others who live in places without garages. The user experience of recharging an EV has been extremely poor for too long. The unreliability, combined with the uncertainty of a charger being available at the destination, is a real issue for drivers, alongside the issues of using multiple apps and cards, and the overall hassle of paying for charging an EV. It is clear that EVs are proving to be more problematic compared to gas cars, hence the shift in attitude towards the former. Environmental impact. One of the most notable and attractive features of the modern EV is its zero-emission component. However, while these streamlined vehicles can significantly decrease the volume of carbon emissions released into the environment, there is a growing concern that EVs aren't as green as they were initially thought to be. Mining lithium for batteries, plus how they're charged, can affect an EV's impact on the environment. Some EV batteries today pack 10 times as much power as an average household uses in a day. And often, those electric vehicles are being charged at home. The ugly is obvious. Most of the electricity generated by grids globally has some greenhouse gas emissions connected to it. So even if a car isn't emitting carbon, it doesn't mean it's perfectly clean. For instance, coal is about the dirtiest way to generate electricity to recharge a car battery. Powering an EV with electricity generated from coal is marginally better than burning gasoline in an internal combustion engine, before an electric vehicle even charged for the first time. However, one key part of its power system already has a significant carbon footprint. For example, the material that helps power the battery is produced from a number of different metals, things like nickel, cobalt, and lithium. Mining and processing the minerals, plus the battery manufacturing process, involve substantial emissions of carbon. Lithium mining, needed to build the lithium-ion batteries at the heart of today's EVs, has also been connected to other kinds of environmental harm. For example, there have been mass fish kills related to lithium mining in Tibet. The freshwater supply is being consumed by mines in South America's lithium-rich region. Even in North America, where mining regulations are strict, harsh chemicals are used to extract the valuable metal. All the operations are energy-intensive, sometimes running on diesel generators and relying on carbon-emitting heavy machinery. Adding to the cumulative effects on the environment, lithium demand is expected to at least triple by 2025, pushing more exploration and extraction globally. We haven't mentioned the worst yet. All that extracted raw material, once the batteries are worn out, will land somewhere. If the batteries aren't properly disposed of, reused, or recycled, They can end up in landfills and potentially leak metals and other hazardous materials into the soil and nearby water sources. Additionally, discarded batteries pose a threat to human health. Lithium-ion batteries may overheat and catch fire when exposed to high temperatures or when penetrated, releasing carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide that can be very harmful to human health. The idea of recycling batteries has been around for a while. However, the current lack of standardization of battery packs presents a challenge for battery recycling. There are many different physical configurations, cell types, and cell chemistries. The cost of recycling ends up justifying the disposal of the entire battery and the creation of a new one. All in all, electric cars are not as environmentally friendly as in theory. What do you think of the environmental impact of electric cars? Tell me in the comments section. Reliability issues. Be it battery issues, software problems, or build quality, EVs are plagued with unending reliability issues. This is in stark contrast with the marketing ideology of better reliability in electric cars. EV drivers report significant reliability issues with their electric vehicles. Electric SUVs are currently ranked as the least reliable car type. To start with, electric climate control systems have been shown to decrease the range of the vehicle if they're inefficient. This is a particular problem when the car starts at a low ambient temperature. So, in winter, drivers are likely to see less efficiency in their car heating systems. While the climate control systems in petrol and diesel cars are generally no more efficient, they have the benefit of vast amounts of waste heat to warm the cabin. Moreover, from failing temperature sensors to faulty electric doors, many EV drivers have complained of problems with their in-car electronics. In May 2022, Tesla issued a recall due to a display screen fault affecting 4 car models. They've also recalled cars to tackle widespread automatic window problems. Some of these issues are irritating but won't compromise your ability to drive the car safely. However, other electronics, such as temperature sensors, are critical for ensuring your battery is operating within safe limits. So, any electronic sensor issues must be flagged and fixed quickly. It's worth noting that many of these issues are related to individual brands or models that happen to be electric. They're not really EV-specific problems as such. These issues have seen car owners flock to service centers, which results in incurring more costs. Other reports suggest that faulty seals are a problem for electric cars, particularly among Tesla drivers. Faulty seals won't stop water from getting into the car, which can be hazardous when there are lots of electrical components to consider. Poor sealing can also lead to excessive noise in the car, as well as drafts and air leakage, another disadvantage of some electric car models. This can make the drive a lot less comfortable and enjoyable. Aesthetically, some electric car models are very disappointing. Buyers have reported issues with panel gaps and poor paint jobs. This surely can compel one to revert to traditional cars, which are known for excellent quality. One other key disadvantage of electric cars is the battery life. Like all batteries, the capacity decreases over time. Researchers suggest battery capacity decreases by approximately 2.3% every year. Battery longevity is highly dependent on temperature. One study found that in places where temperatures are high, batteries last for 5.2 years on average. On the other hand, in a cold climate, they could last up to 13.3 years. Traditional cars register very little performance fluctuation in different climatic conditions, which is what most people want for their cars. Therefore, it is not surprising that people are considering going back to ICE cars. But wait, if declining battery life isn't enough to make EV owners think twice, what about the hefty price tag that comes with owning one? Let's dive into the numbers and see why the cost is tipping the scales in favor of gasoline cars in this heated debate. Cost of ownership. As we are about to find out, the cost is one of the major factors that is raised in the heated electric cars versus petrol cars debate. The question that remains then is why EVs are more expensive than ICE vehicles. There are myriad reasons, it turns out, starting with the fact that car manufacturers have spent billions in the research and development of EVs, and they'd like to make some of that money back. This is fair enough if you're the kind of person who feels sympathy for giant, rapacious, and hugely profitable car companies that may or may not have contributed to the problems we're attempting to solve by moving to EVs. The high cost of EVs doesn't exactly drive up demand either. which is a problem not helped by a lack of meaningful incentives from most governments to encourage EV uptake. Despite incentives introduced in the UK, and particularly Norway, demonstrably boosting the sale of EVs, other governments are yet to use a similar tack. In a frustrating chicken and egg situation, a lack of significant demand also keeps prices high, meaning that some people are going to have to bite the bullet and start buying EVs so that prices can begin to drop for others. Thank you for your bold sacrifice. The rest of us appreciate it. Pun intended. EVs also use hundreds and sometimes thousands of lithium-ion batteries in any one battery pack. And currently, they're not exactly cheap. Car manufacturers will pay around $135 per kWh for battery packs, which typically range in capacity from 40 kWh to 100 kWh. This may not always be the case though, with a recent study predicting that this cost will drop to $58 per kilowatt hour by 2030. It's no secret that replacing an EV's old battery pack with a new one will set you back thousands of dollars. To finish with, let's take a case study of one of the cheapest EVs, the Nissan Leaf and the Sentra, to illustrate the upfront cost. Even accounting for the then available federal tax credit of $7,000, the Leaf's cost of entry remained notably higher than that of the similarly sized Nissan Sentra, which stickered for less than $17,000 in 2011. Ignore the impact of the tax credit, and the delta between the least expensive electric Leaf and gas-powered Sentra in 2011 totaled more than $15,000. Account for inflation, and that figure balloons to nearly $20,000. Fast forward to today, and the delta between the 2024 Sentra and 2024 Leaf, which start at $21,745 and $29,295, respectively, sits at $7,550. That difference shrinks to $3,800 when accounting for the $3,750 tax credit the federal government offers on the 2024 Leaf. To be frank, electric cars are not so affordable yet. Even as electric cars boast of fewer moving parts and thus less frequent maintenance, their relatively higher weight in comparison to gas cars means that their tires and suspension are changed more frequently. We might be too harsh on EVs on this particular one. Hence, we look forward to your checks in the comments. Before we continue, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Your support is paramount, and thanks in advance. Depreciation. Another big reason people are moving away from electric cars is resale price or aftermarket valuation. Like all assets, EVs depreciate over time. The rate and factors of depreciation for electric vehicles can differ significantly from their internal combustion counterparts, affecting both consumer choices and long-term financial planning. Electric vehicle depreciation is a hot topic right now, and for good reason. On the one hand, there are some fantastic deals to be had on the second-hand market, but on the other, of course, there's the thorny issue of some EVs losing half of their value in a single year. Cars losing you a chunk of cash the instant they're driven off the dealer lot is nothing new, especially at the pricier end of the market. And if you intend to keep your shiny new EV for a long time, then it's worth far less after just a year or two. But what if you've experimented with your first EV and then decided its range or your local charging infrastructure isn't up to scratch, and you want to sell within the first year? If that's you, you'd better be prepared for a significant loss. Understanding how electric vehicle depreciation works is crucial for buyers, sellers, and industry stakeholders. It not only influences individual purchasing decisions, but also impacts broader economic and environmental policies. Let's try to understand why these vehicles lose value at this alarming rate. The depreciation of electric vehicles is influenced by a variety of factors that interplay to determine their market value over time. One of the primary factors is technological advancement. As the technology behind EVs rapidly evolves, older models can quickly become outdated, leading to a faster depreciation rate. For instance, improvements in battery technology can make earlier models less desirable due to their lower range and efficiency. Market perception and consumer demand also play significant roles in shaping EV depreciation. Electric vehicles that enjoy high consumer demand and hold a positive market perception tend to depreciate slower than those that are less popular. Brands that are perceived as pioneers or leaders in the EV market, such as Tesla, often see their vehicles holding value better due to strong brand loyalty and perceived innovation. Government policies and incentives are another influential factor. Regions with strong support for electric vehicles, such as tax breaks or subsidies for EV buyers, can bolster demand and slow depreciation rates. Conversely, if a government were to reduce incentives or impose stricter regulations, it could lead to a quicker devaluation of electric vehicles. How about we touch on how to determine depreciation? I know you don't mind. When assessing the depreciation of electric vehicles, several methodologies can be applied. One common approach is the straight-line depreciation method, which assumes a constant rate of depreciation each year over the vehicle's useful life. This method is straightforward and widely used due to its simplicity. For example, if an EV is expected to have a lifespan of 8 years and retain 40% of its value, it would depreciate by 7.5% of its original value annually. With that, let's proceed to the next reason as to why EV owners are rethinking their choices. Now that we've talked about how EVs lose their value over time, let's dive into another serious concern that could literally put your life at risk: safety hazards you might not even be aware of. Shocking dangers lurking in EVs. The largest concerns around EVs tend to focus on the potential energy hazard of lithium-ion batteries. Manufacturers have worked to address safety questions with self-contained systems that prevent leakage or other compromises to the system. But here are some of the most frequently discussed safety concerns. With an arc flash, you're dealing with an electrical system that is leaking energy, which could lead to the ionization of the air around the electrical system. It's unpredictable and can result in burns or death for any workers standing nearby. Other than that, we have the problem of electric shock. Depending on where the circuit flows, electric shock could be a potential safety concern for technicians who come into contact with energized components of the vehicle. Vehicles damaged in an accident increase the risk of shock, electrocution, fatal, explosion, fires, and chemical burns. The Society of Automotive Engineers has recommended that manufacturers install battery kill switches to protect drivers and rescue personnel from risk. You'll want to make sure your team knows where these switches are located in each vehicle and how to ensure the vehicle stays powered down while maintenance is performed. One rather abstract but extremely dangerous hazard is thermal runaway, which is when heat within the battery leads to an uncontrolled chemical reaction. The release of heat and energy leads to a breakdown in the battery consumes itself, and a chain reaction, which can lead to catastrophic failure of the equipment, a potential explosion, and fire that leads to the complete destruction of the vehicle. Besides working with lithium-ion batteries, there are also electrical dangers lurking in EV charging stations, which will likely spur a need for safety inspections in the future. Electrical problems within the facility become a bigger risk because these charging ports are high voltage. Defects, age, or potential problems in the infrastructure could result in a fire or damage to other costly equipment. It's essential that these components be properly installed and maintained. Another point to consider in terms of EV safety is the aftermath of a crash. Tests show EVs hold up well in a simulated crash. Their batteries make the vehicles heavier, offering better protection to the passengers inside. But that extra weight, hundreds to even thousands of pounds, has traffic safety advocates concerned about the potential risk to other drivers. If an electric vehicle collides with a much lighter vehicle, the aftermath of the crash is likely to be way more severe, almost certainly tragic. Hybrids are becoming more popular. Next on our list, we have hybrid vehicles as yet another reason people are ditching electric cars. Hybrids combine a battery pack, an electric motor that drives the car at low speeds, and a gas engine that kicks in for higher speeds, climbing hills, or recharging the battery. Regenerative braking uses the car's momentum as it slows down or coasts to create extra electricity. Given that they offer good fuel efficiency and are capable of making long trips without requiring charging breaks, it's no surprise that they are dethroning battery electric vehicles. For most hybrids, you never worry about charging, as they generate all their electric energy internally from the motion of the engine. Even Tesla, which famously doesn't sell hybrids and is unlikely to do so anytime soon, is taking notice. In his latest earnings report, the company blamed demand for hybrid vehicles for depressing global EV sales. The EV adoption rate globally is under pressure, and a lot of other auto manufacturers are pulling back on EVs and pursuing plug-in hybrids instead, said CEO Elon Musk in an earnings call. We believe this is not the right strategy, and electric vehicles will ultimately dominate the market, he added. The lack of affordable EVs has been cited as one of the biggest reasons why drivers are reluctant to go electric. Hybrids, which tend to be more affordable than pure EVs, appear to be reaping the benefits. Buyers paid $42,500 for hybrids in November 2023 on average, compared with $60,500 for electric vehicles and $47,500 for gas cars, according to data from Edmunds reported by the New York Times. The additional costs associated with fully electric vehicles are definitely higher than hybrids. Many hybrid electric vehicles now are not far off from their internal combustion engine alternatives, so the lower incremental costs associated with hybrids at this point are driving some interest towards hybrids versus fully electric vehicles. Affordability and charging are the biggest factors swaying consumers from taking the plunge and buying a pure EV. With neither barrier an issue for hybrids, it seems that the hybrid boom is unlikely to die down anytime soon. But affordability and charging aren't the only barriers holding consumers back. There's a bigger problem lurking behind the scenes: an awareness gap that's keeping many would-be EV buyers in the dark. An awareness issue. Lastly, there is also an issue of education for buyers who are new to a technology that can be very different from gas-powered cars. Despite the accelerating push toward electric vehicles, EVs, as a more sustainable alternative to gas-powered cars, one of the most significant hurdles in the shift to EVs isn't just the technology itself, it's a glaring lack of education and awareness among consumers. A recent study reveals that 34% of potential buyers cite gaps of information as a major barrier to adopting EVs, and it's not hard to see why. Many people still have a limited understanding of how EVs work, how to maintain them, or even the simplest aspects, like where and how to charge them. For instance, while EVs are heralded as cleaner and cheaper alternatives, many potential buyers are unclear on crucial details such as home charging solutions, the real cost savings over time, or how the charging infrastructure works when they're on the road. How many consumers know that the average home charger can cost between $500 to $2,000 to install, or that a level 2 charger can fully charge most EVs in about 4 to 6 hours? How many are aware of how to locate public charging stations, or what to do if they run out of juice before they reach one? At the heart of the issue is a staggering gap in knowledge. According to the research, while 18% of people have almost no awareness of EVs, 59% express a strong desire to learn more. This is a clear signal that the demand for information is there, but the resources to meet this demand are sorely lacking. So, who is responsible for closing this education gap? Unfortunately, the answer isn't clear-cut. Historically, car dealerships have been the primary point of contact for consumers looking to understand new vehicle technologies. Yet, many dealerships have been slow to embrace EVs. The reasons are multifaceted. Selling electric vehicles involves expensive infrastructure investments, like charging stations, and the potential loss of lucrative service and repair revenue from gas-powered cars. For car dealers, selling EVs is more than just a business decision. It's a shift in the entire service model that they've been hesitant to adopt. On the other hand, automakers themselves have long relied on dealerships to educate consumers, leaving gaps in direct communication. Many automakers are also caught in the difficult position of trying to scale up production of EVs without fully ensuring the systems, support, and training are in place to meet consumer needs. While pushing toward green initiatives, these manufacturers are also under significant pressure to sell EVs profitably, something that's not guaranteed in a market where consumer demand is still in its infancy, and vehicle production remains challenging due to supply chain bottlenecks and high production costs. But the problem goes beyond just the car dealers and automakers. It touches on broader systemic issues, like the lack of a cohesive national strategy for EV education and infrastructure development. Many buyers, especially in rural or less urbanized areas, are still unsure about how EVs would fit into their lifestyle, given the limited availability of charging stations outside city centers. And without a clear, unified message from both automakers and public agencies, the confusion persists. Well, There you have it. Some of the key reasons why EV owners are starting to rethink their choice and consider returning to traditional gas-powered vehicles. From affordability issues to the lack of education, and of course the shocking dangers that come with these high-tech machines, it's clear that switching to electric cars isn't as simple as it seems. But what do you think? Are you still on the electric car bandwagon, or are you leaning toward a return to good old gasoline? Let us know in the comments below.